Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitical Trends, where truth matters. Excited to be with you once again. First of all, for yesterday, regarding yesterday, my dear friend Einar apologized. I mean, he couldn't make it. I knew something came up, so he had an emergency to deal with, and I rescheduled it for Saturday. So he will be here on Saturday around the same time, 2100 hours. So I look forward to that conversation. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on this. Anyway, I have an interesting topic, at least for me, given my academic and professional background for the time that I spent in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East at large. This one has to do with the recent trip, the ongoing trip of Donald Trump to Saudi Arabia. He's today in Qatar, and I think tomorrow is going to be in United Arab Emirates. But I'm going to be talking about the agreements that have been reached and the deals that have been signed, which, in my opinion, it's nothing but it exemplifies the greed that's going on, and it's all about Mr. Trump. Has nothing to do with the welfare of the American people. So, of course, the Saudis play out to all this naivety of Donald Trump, and I will be sharing some excerpts with you from my book. In addition to what I told you yesterday, I happen to have a list of names as to who went there, and I'll share that with you and let you reach your own conclusion. So, but first, let's say hi to our wonderful community. So, let me, since the writing, I gotta clean up those glasses here, reading glasses. Uh, uh, to me, it just made sense to me to think in terms of, okay, what does it all mean? You know, and again, this is why sort of I had to catch up on the reading this morning, got up early to finish up the reading of the assessments and so forth, and this way I'll provide you an idea of what's going on. So, but first, let's say hi to Matt Becky. Good to see you. Truth seeker as always. Atin Wu, here you are. I haven't seen you for a while. I know you're busy. So, Amanda, good to see you as always. And thank you for your kind support, Amanda. Really appreciate you for that. Santan, good to see you. Tom Wires, good to see you as always. Dambisa Mayo from, check out where, guys, this Dambisa joining us from Gambia. So, and as a matter of fact, there is something going on around that neighborhood. So I just read something yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, a country that ended up selling the assets of its, I think, one of the opposition or something, which is not right. So anyway, Francis Tango, as always, good to see you. Fred Ball, good to see you here. And okay, that's it, guys. Let's get into our conversation. Once again, just to remind you, remember to join me on Saturday, the 17th at 2100 hours for my conversation with Einar Tangen. So I'm going to set it up this afternoon as soon as I'm done here. I just want to give you a heads up. So let's do some headlines quickly here, and I'll jump into the topic. So first one, I want to start with something coming out of, has to do with China. And this one, the picture you're going to be seeing is the BL-15E missile, which is a Chinese missile. Now, the story was brokered by an Italian writer. His name is Fabio Lugano, and I checked the story. I saw the translated version of it from Italian, and he's the one who disclosed the information about the. And actually, I'm going to put a link for you later on from the Scenari Economica, which is the magazine where he wrote this. Anyway, this one has to do with the Chinese BL-15E, which is air-to-air surface missile that crashed inside Indian territory during the tensions between Pakistan and India. You all remember. So, and why is this important, you may ask? Because certain parts of the missile didn't break. So to India, this is a valuable military trophy, because now this could open up doors to revealing the advanced Chinese technological systems and secret regarding the missile advancements, because China is ahead regarding the missile technology. So, and of course, this is one of China's most advanced missiles that crashed this past week. Because the remaining of the missile still intact, completely intact. So and that now is going to be providing India with an opportunity to reverse engineer, which means it's by conclusion that India is going to end up sharing this with Israel and other allies, so-called allies. So it's the same what we did regarding, you remember, I'm going to bring a story for you. 2011, and I was in the middle of all that, what was taking place at that time. You all remember the raid on the Abbottabad in Pakistan, where UBL used to be, right? So what did we end up doing? We end up having to blow up the bird at that time. So, well, even with that, the Pakistanis turned the remnant of that plane to the Chinese. So, because that's how it works, you reverse engineer. The same thing Iran did with certain type of drones for the US, that some of them end up falling, and guess what? The Iranians took that and reverse engineering and they come up with that. So it is my belief that India is going to be the same. A second one has to do with the Houthis, but not about the Houthis themselves, but because of what Donald Trump said. As a matter of fact, what he said yesterday in Riyadh, because what did he do? He lifted the sanctions on Syria. And that's something I'm thinking about whether to do a live stream for you, if you guys want to learn more about what's going on with Syria. So here's a picture for you guys. Because Donald Trump met with Giuliani. Yeah, whoever thought that a Syrian president will meet with a former terrorist, part of AQ, part of ISIS, and part of the head of the HTS, Hayat Tahrir Sham. So anyway, you look at just the optics of it, but that's beside the point. So what Donald Trump is saying is that, well, we're gonna sort of expect that to meet with the I don't know why they call him Syrian president. He's an interim president. People didn't vote for him yet. So with Giuliani anyway. And what's important about all this is that what Donald Trump said about, beside the lifting of sanctions on Syria, is what he said about the Houthis. And here is what he said, and I'm quoting here. I'm quoting rather. It's time to give Syria a chance, and I wish them good luck. The US president also added, it's their time to shine, and we will lift all sanctions. Good luck to them with that. And within the same setting, here is where the contradiction of Trump, it just doesn't have the cohesiveness of understanding how things. Within the same setting, Trump spoke about the Houthis and threatens Iran if it rejects the nuclear agreement. And this to me was statements to feed the narrative for the Saudis. Because remember, despite the relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran, that animosity is still behind closed doors. This is one of the reasons also why the Saudis wanted to have the civilian nuclear technology. And I can't warn enough against something like that. But again, that's just my opinion. So. And here is what Donald Trump said in his speech at the US-Saudi Investment Forum that took place yesterday. So he said that he praised the progress Saudi Arabia has witnessed. I don't know which progress he's talking about. That's how the hypes, But he also addressed the Houthis and praising their courage. Well, of course, you praise their courage because you couldn't defeat them. And they end up driving you out. That's the hard fact. So you praise them all you want. The fact speaks for themselves. So he's praising their courage, but also said that he seeks to strike a deal with Iran to make the world safer, but warned Tehran of a dire consequences if talks on a new nuclear agreement fail. Well, it's all hypes. Look what he used to say about China. You remember when the tariffs were imposed the first time, and the argument was, oh, we're going to impose tariffs on the Chinese till they agree to negotiate. And what did China do? They said, whatever, we will impose our own tariffs, and we're not coming to the negotiating table till you lift all the tariffs. Once again, guys, do not confuse what just happened in Switzerland for the so-called the 90 days pause. That means it's not a deal. That's one thing I need you to be aware of that. All right, let's get into our talk about the Saudis and Donald Trump. And I put this one here and put that title. Let's hope it works out, because all you are seeing is nothing but a smoke screen. You know, I've been around long enough and understand how the U.S. government gets involved in deals and so forth. Because this one here is for Trump to save his face. It's saving face, basically. That's all it is. So who is going to reach out to one of the so-called allies? Well, it's not an ally. It's a servant, you know, because they have money. It's going to be selling the image of, look how much investments I brought to the U.S. Because this is what it's going to be about. It's all it's about. So, and that's why Trump sort of now, he claims to receive pledges from the Saudis yesterday regarding that the desert kingdom is going to be investing about $600 billion in the US over some period of time, whatever that time is. So, and of course, we're only talking about this one here because there's also some other deals with Qatar, some other deals with United Arab Emirates. All remember, you have to always go back to the really what's at the heart of all this is that the survival of those monarchies depends quietly on the US support. That's the bottom line to it. This is why, if you notice, the Saudis welcomed Giuliani into Riyadh. That's why he came to Riyadh to meet with Donald Trump. But the Saudis met with him first to give him the marching orders, because you all know Giuliani is the one we put him there in power. So what I'm going to be doing for you guys is I'm going to be providing you certain sections as to what is all this investments is going to be about, and I'll tackle one by one, and we just go from there. So I'll start with the artificial intelligence zone. So this is one of the deals that the US, the Amazon Web Services, and Saudi Arabia's artificial intelligence startup, there's a company called Humane, announced plan to invest about $5 billion for strategic partners to build an AI zone. First of all, how are you going to build an AI zone in Saudi Arabia that does not have the infrastructure, does not have the manpower? Where are you going to get the workforce from? And this is what I want you to keep in mind. Despite what you hear, you know how Trump works. He's this honest as he can get. Of course, he has to inflate and engulf all what's going on. Okay. Second thing is an American chip company. It's called AMD. AMD and Humane announced plan to build an AI infrastructure with an investment of up to $10 billion. And this one, the purpose for it is to deploy about 500 megawatts of AI computing capacity over the next 5 years. Good luck with that. Once again, just be realistic in your own assessment, guys. You know, does Saudi Arabia has the technological infrastructure to sustain all this? Another company is called Data Vault. Data Vault, this is where Saudi Arabia planned to invest about $20 billion in energy infrastructure and AI data centers in the United States. In the United States, not in Saudi Arabia. Once again, just try to see the big picture, because it will make more sense to you to understand all this smoke screen of this. Oh, we got a deal of $600 billion. We're going to be selling weapons of about $120 billion and so forth. You know, first of all, there are protocols for how you go about this. Even the deal that he announced back in his first term about selling $105 billion, Department of Defense didn't confirm the sale at that time. So Trump always liked to inflate. I mean, look what he just did regarding the talks that took place in Switzerland between China and the US regarding tariffs by his saying, oh, we have successfully reached a deal. It was no deal. It was no deal. And this is what you need to be aware of. Liking this video so far? Don't just be a watcher. Go ahead and hit the like, share, and subscribe button. And don't forget to tap the bell so you will not miss any of my videos or live streams. This way, you will be supporting a channel that stands for the truth and objective reporting. The choice is yours. Thanks for your support. The next one has to do with the joint technology investments. And this one involves Google, it involves Oracle, it involves Salesforce, it involved AMD, which is the same company before, and it involved Data Vault. You know, they're all the same. They're all the same. So, and Uber. So, and all of them, they decide to invest about $80 billion in the technology sector in the US and to a degree in Saudi Arabia. But you don't know what it means. When they add Saudi Arabia into the sentence, it's just to make them feel good, because where are they going to put that? Once again, Saudi, and I'm not putting Saudi Arabia down here. I'm just speaking facts. I've been there. It does not have the infrastructure for that. So then comes the infrastructure projects, which is that the construction consultancies, there is a company by the name Hill International, and Jacobs and Parsons, you know, and AECOM are all handling infrastructure projects in Saudi Arabia. Now, like, for example, King Salman's International Airport. And I'm going to just ask you a question because it's common sense. Who would you go with? Do you go with the Chinese companies for infrastructure, or you go with the Americans' infrastructure? Let me see your answer in the chat box. And I don't mean to insult your intelligence here, but I need to ask the questions. I know it's obvious, but still, we're just going to wonder. Carleon, you say China. And I agree with you. John Smith, China. Who else? YT, China, for course. I agree with you guys. It's because I had a chance to see when I was in mainland China crossing, for example, to Macau, that bridge that, and I decided I didn't want to fly. I wanted to ride the bus. Why? Because I wanted to get on that bridge and see with my own eyes. State of the art. State of the art. And it was done in a timely and on a budget. And this is why, again, it's just you need to understand all these dynamics. And all this falls within what MBS is hoping for the idea of, you know, we're gonna rebuild sort of the kingdom and mix it, because they are concerned about running out of oil. So here is what I wrote, and as I told you, I'm going to share an excerpt with you. Here is what I wrote back then. How odd that MBS portrays himself as a champion of a change and a fiscal responsibility. It was revealed that he was the buyer of the expensive chateau of Louis XIV for a $300 million price tag. And by the way, FYI, guys, Louis XIV, the King of France, from 1643 till 1715. That's when he died. And it was verified his reign for about 72 years and 110 days. That's the exact reign, and is considered the longest of any monarch in history. So, but anyway, he ended up buying the chateau of Louis XIV. B, a Leonardo da Vinci painting, Salvador del Mondo. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that painting. It was purchased for $450 million. And that was the most expensive art sale in history. And C, a $500 million yacht from a Russian vodka financier. So as argued in my previous writings, I believe the socially progressive steps MBS announced are nothing but a smoke screen. The investments listed above can cast doubt on his ability to transform Saudi Arabia through his economic vision 2030. That's what I argued back then. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But again, I am seeing the reality on the ground differently. So let's continue with our US delegation that went over. And I'm going to share with you some names because they were about, to my knowledge, about 35 individual head of companies, CEOs, and so forth. They went with Trump. Then there is the gas turbines and aircraft. You all know what happened with Boeing. So the agreement that US exports includes gas turbines and power solutions from GE. And those are totaling about $14 billion. In addition to Boeing, passenger aircraft that's going to be sent for $4.8 billion. By the way, the head of Boeing won over. Are you going to buy Boeing? Given the recent history, I'll let you be the judge of that. Healthcare, also that's part of this deal as well. All of this, what this has to do with us, the citizens, the taxpayers here in the US. How is that going to benefit the American people? I just don't see any link whatsoever. It's going to benefit the billionaires and it's going to benefit Trump. So this is what I'm seeing here. So the health investments, there's also some investments of $6 billion in some projects, whatever that means. So then on the financial sector, you have the investments from Franklin Templeton, which is known here in the US for investments, about $115 million. And all this, by the way, guys, all this done in a memorandum of understanding. You know, read between the lines. That reminds me exactly what happened during the G20 summit. I don't know if you guys remember, in India. What was the memorandum of understanding that was signed? Do you guys remember? It was that India is going to collaborate with the Europeans to create a transit from India all the way to Europe. Where is it? Who's going to fund it? Same arguments I'm making here. And I'm, again, use history as your guide always, because it gives you, provides you insights and proof. So another company is Aramco. Aramco is a Saudi company, but it is not a Saudi company. It's the royal family company. So of course it says Aramco by itself. Of course, one thing the Aramco did a few years ago, and I disclosed that in my Saudi book, when they inflated their value to about $2.4 trillion. The company wasn't worth that much. And the reason they did that, because they were at that time offering an IPO, okay? And they wanted the Chinese investors. That's why they inflated the. In any event, Aramco's CEO announced that the company will sign a memorandum of understanding with two companies in the US. One of them next decade, it's called Next Decade, which is a liquefied natural gas producer, and Sempra Utilities. Here is my argument. Why would you do this when you have your neighbor, Qatar, one of the top liquefied natural gas in the world? Proximity is close to you. Why would you go all the way and pay the Americans for that? Which, by the way, Americans will charge you 10 times the price. Because this is exactly what Europe did. When they cut off the Russian gas, they end up buying from the US. Of course, India was selling them at a 5 times the price. India took advantage of that. Do you blame the Indian government? No. So, next one is NVIDIA. Now, you know about NVIDIA, a US chip giant NVIDIA. You have NVIDIA, and you have an artificial intelligence startup called Humane, Humane. So, and all those, by the way, owned by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia Sovereign Wealth Funds. This is why the head of the US investment that deals with the Saudi sovereign wealth, attended the meeting, the first one, when Marco Rubio won over there way back. And I asked you guys the question, why somebody will be attending that is from the sovereign wealth fund? And here we are. So, and by the way, the largest, maybe used to be, maybe still, I don't know, the world largest semiconductor producer, TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. So which over the years has been routinely trading and collaborating with China. So, of course, till Joe Biden intended to paralyze the Taiwan trade and investment relations with the PRC. So, and in what amount to basically was a strategic decision. This is why Washington ordered Taipei to implement reallocation of TSMC to Arizona. And of course, is now working. Is now working out. And I'm going to share something with you. Just came up from, I got it through, I follow my friend Rick Turin, which, by the way, I am talking with him to see if he's available next week. Someone you want to hear from him. So Rick Turin, and I'm going to share the screen with you, put on a tweet, and I follow him on that. So let me share the screen with you guys so you can see. And it will all make sense to you as why the US is blocking certain aspects. So hold on a second here. Let me share a picture first. Right there. Take a look at this. And this one is Huawei. Okay. Yeah. That is what Rick wrote. The US just can't get over its Huawei obsession and once again goes on the attack. Now, according to new export control, all users of Huawei AI chips must obtain licenses from the US. Good luck trying to make that stick. I couldn't agree more with Rick. He's spot on, you know, and this is why you understand now why this hype's about Trump saying we have reached a deal with the Chinese regarding trade. No, you're lying, Mr. Trump. You are lying because you want to soften the blow regarding the impact that the tech companies are facing here in the US. So, there is another one company called Burcon World Investments. And this one, US investment platform Burcon, it's US, not America, not Saudi, said it has signed a memorandum of understanding with a Saudi partner totaling $15 billion in new investment commitments. Remember, all this is an MOU. MOUs are subject to either move forward or just be canceled or even be used as a follow-up per se. Now comes the key question. Who want to the trip with Donald Trump? So let me share some names. I'm not gonna say all of them because it's a long list. I'm just gonna share a few here with you guys. So you have, of course, Elon Musk. As a matter of fact, I do have a picture for you here, guys, to see the list yourself. I can't make it any bigger than this. So but I'm gonna read some for you guys. You have Elon Musk. Okay. Okay, let me hold on a second. Let me open up this one here. It makes more sense here. So Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, of course, and SpaceX. Then you have Schwarzman. He's the CEO of Blackstone Group. Then you have Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock. Jenny Johnson, CEO of Franklin Templeton. You have Arvind Krishna, he's the CEO of IBM. Jane Fraser, CEO of Citigroup. Okay. Orte Beg, CEO of Boeing. Ruth Porat, CEO of Google. Of course, the CEO of Amazon, Andy Jassy. So, and of course, Jeff Miller, CEO of Halliburton. And again, I'm not going to do the whole list, just to give you an idea. Halliburton, by the way, was the one selling oil to the US government, the US military, when we were in Iraq, I remember, and I found out how much they are charging. And this is why, and it's not a laughing matter, this is why you need to understand the Saudi, anytime we want to make a big show of investments in America and so forth, we reach out to the Saudis, sign MOUs, show the numbers, say this is the numbers and so forth. And especially when you think about the defense contractors. This is why you are seeing, for example, a regular wrench that costs $5,000 on the bill because the Saudi is paying for that. You and I know a wrench, for example, shouldn't cost that much. Whatever else, all the items are so expensive. And this is why you have to put this in perspective. What is the overall objective for the whole trip? How is that going to benefit the American people who are now struggling, economically speaking, and things are about to get a little bit tougher within the next month or two? So when you have, in addition to Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, Treasury Secretary, and so Commerce Secretary, and all of them going to Saudis, it is all about supporting the billionaires at the expense of the average citizen right here. To the Saudis, I can't speak for them. It's their country. They can do whatever they want. And I don't care. I care for my country here. And this is why you get the likes of Elon Musk now telling the MBS, oh, you should see what our robots do. They can dance. Of course, we all know it was same guy, Elon, that when BYD launched the car, he was laughing at that and said, oh, this car stands no chance. And look where we are right now. Ask anybody here right now, will they buy Tesla? The answer is going to be no, because the cost is so astronomical in comparison to what BYD charges for a car. I saw them with my own eyes. So you think also about what a BlackRock CEO doing in this trip is to coordinate with the Saudis on behalf of rebuilding Syria by having access and controlling. Sam Altman, the of OpenAI, charging the Saudis $500 billion for it when China developed it for $5 million. So just to put this in perspective for you, and I wanted to share this with you for sort of as to why that is. This leads me to think about one particular aspect as to why Saudi Arabia now is supporting Joulani of Syria, the terrorist guy who used to be the HTS. Don't be shocked if I tell you that most likely the Saudis have funded. They have funded HTS behind the scenes, which is nothing classified, nothing secret about it. It's well known if you know how the petrodollars have been deployed in supporting certain nefarious activities. And this is why it is my belief that the Saudis wants to ensure that it will be no issues with the minorities inside the kingdom, mainly the Shia. Joulani is not a Shiite, he's a Sunni. And this is why when you hear statements or read statement that says, and I quote, supporting Syria's security and stability and encouraging political solutions that preserves the country's unity and stability, end of quote. You all know what it means. Once again, here is what I argued back then in my Saudi book that is still resonate, in my opinion, today. Why that is. So far, the relations between Saudi Arabia and its patron, the United States, are improving. How long will that last? It is anyone's guess. Trump convinced the Saudis to purchase $110 billion of weapons, though the US Department of Defense refused to confirm the sale. Regardless, purchases of that scale should precipitate an arms race in the region. Only a few weeks later, Iran announced its intention to purchase weapons from China and Russia. Similarly, Turkey purchased Russia's S-400 advanced air-to-surface missile system. With the Saudi purchase of US weapons, Riyadh hopes for something in return. The repeal of contentious 2016 law that allows relatives of 9/11 victims to sue Saudi Arabia for the death of their loved ones. As of this writing, Saudi Arabia looks more vulnerable than ever. Moreover, Trump is utterly mistaken if he thinks he can influence events on the ground in the Middle East. For now, Trump's naivety appears to be leading him on a fool's errand of gamely doing the Saudi dirty work. Such a policy does not serve America or its national interest, only the Saudis. And that's what I argued back then. And of course, I was familiar with the investigation at that time, and Congress swept it under the rug. So the families of 9/11 never get justice for the loss of their loved ones. But of course, the whole September 11th, it's a conversation for its own. Don't be fooled by thinking that is also was mainly just the Saudi. There is more than meet the eye. It might be a conversation for some other time on another platform. So, and this is why you have to put this in perspective, because when you consider the evolvement of MBS, how he moved from the campaign of arrest, you all remember when he took over power, what is the first thing he did? Arrested the other princes and all those, questioning the idea of corruption and all that stuff. So, and at the same time, a lot of investors in the West were questioning his judgments and leadership abilities. The guy is so young, doesn't understand, doesn't have an in-depth understanding of what foreign affairs are all about. I mean, he couldn't even handle what Jamal Khashoggi was saying. And this is why I always argued that at this way back then, I remember saying, mark my word, that entities on both sides of the Atlantic will now be wondering about the future stability of Saudi Arabia. Because to me it was like any shrewd investor, even to those who had a chance to meet with MBS back then, behind closed doors, they are asking themselves, should we trust this guy? Because he says that he does not intend to do any more clamp down or anti-corruption, whatever. But you all know how it works. So, and I remained, even from the time when I wrote that book, I remained under no illusion. No illusion that the future of the kingdom is some sort of as obscure as it can get, despite what you hear. Forget about the continual rhetoric, the flowery speeches, and empty promises, which is exactly what we are witnessing with Donald Trump. But again, Donald Trump is a showman. I mean, go back in history. I mean, just ask yourself, how did Donald Trump manage to get into the Wharton School, for example, School of Business, which is sort of prestigious institutions for that, and you have to have some good grades for that. So you know what I'm getting at. So, and this is why when you hear these empty promises and so forth, You know, I've always been convinced that the reality inside Saudi Arabia suggests otherwise. So, yeah, and of course, it's hard to tell what the future entails. And I even argued on many occasions that my predictions about the future of the kingdom, sort of, while it's based on some host of factors, you know, uh, I've been on the ground. I understand the culture. I speak the language. I've dealt with their government on a representative capacity. But again, when you look at the persistent economic trends, when you look at the oil fluctuations, because to the Saudis, the barrel of oil cannot go below $90. Because anything, if it goes down to 70, whatever, it's a big problem to the Saudis. Because that's how Saudis maintain their social contracts with the people, to keep them quiet. So, of course, if oil goes above $100 a barrel, this is why you are noticing the prices of oil. Because right here in the US, the shale industry here, right here in the US, shale oil, they're trying to maintain oil at $90 an hour, a barrel. So, but on the other hand, to the Saudis, with unemployment that is massive going on, and of course the geopolitical shifts, all this, in my opinion, renders Saudis as a spectator rather than an influencer. Because gone the era of the 70s, Saudi played a major role in the 70s. Why is this important? Because what happened in 1973, guys? I just want to 1973. Major year. You should know this one here. 1973. Oh, Army with Harmony, oil embargo, Karakulak, oil embargo. That is correct. That OPEC has specific threshold, Marco. Oil embargo. You're absolutely correct, guys. And the idea of right after that one, and the deal, even though it has been negotiated before, as far as ensuring the dollar will be the currency by which Saudi sells oil. Even though you and I know today, Saudis could accept some other medium. This is why. And again, like I always say, think and see the big picture. This is why we have never disclosed exactly how much gold do we have in Fort Knox, if we ever do have gold. It's because the concern has always been, could the transactions in the energy be backed by the gold instead of the US dollar? And this is why it's important to understand for why the Saudis will have to depend on oil as of today, because that's all they have. And if oil prices goes all the way down, it's a problem. If they go too high, it's even more problematic for them. So yeah, Saudis did play a major role in the Middle East back then. The geopolitical shift has sort of changed the equation, changed the calculus for all parties involved. And add to that, guys, add to that one, United States' astonishing and overarching lack of advocacy for really, really an inclusive international order. Because here is what we want. And I need you to know this one and understand it. You might never hear about it elsewhere. Here is what we want. We want a unipolar system in the world. But you know what? We don't want to be part of it. We just want it there. Why? Because that unipolar system will have the US dollar at its center. But we do not want to be subjected to the rules of that unipolar system or order. This is why we are pushing back against multipolarity. Multipolarity is going to have its own challenges. But if it's managed correctly, I bet you it will work. Why? It's because the American system has been exposed. The massive corruption that exists. The system is flawed. And this is one thing you have to understand as to the challenges that lies ahead moving forward in the new international order, which we already stepped into, by the way. And that's the US in action on this. That was represented by, I remember, I don't know if you guys ever had a chance to read a novel. It was written by Eugene Burdick and William Lederer. It's called The Ugly American. And you know what it was about? It was the one that depicts the failures of the United States diplomatic corps in Southeast Asia. So that was exactly what Donald Trump personifies, in my opinion. And again, I am not the type of individuals to talk nasty about people, whatever. That's just not me. That's not my personality. But however, I will not shy away from exposing dishonesty, the lies. I wish, literally, because you know how you can tell the strength of someone's character is when he or she is capable of saying, I am sorry when they do wrong or whatever. Saying sorry doesn't mean they are weak. That's a sign of strength. I don't think so Trump has it in him to be able to do this. And this is sorry to whom? To the American people. You know, those who voted for him are living with the consequences, and that's their decision. You know, so I didn't vote, and I have no intentions of voting ever. Made it clear, because there's nothing to, you know, the system is corrupted. If I vote, then I am contributing to that. So I have no desire of the wind balance. All right, guys, that's all I have to share with you. I just wanted to share this with you. I'm going to put a survey for you guys regarding whether you would like me to cover Syria, because why all of a sudden the US lifted the sanctions on Syria makes you just think twice about. It became clear as to who we put in charge to serve our agenda. So I take this opportunity to say thank you again for taking a part of the survey when I asked the question, should Putin meet with Zelensky? 25% of you said yes, 71% said no, and 4% say, I don't know. Makes perfect sense. You know, once again, I am not convinced that it will make perfect sense for Putin himself to meet with Zelensky. You can send Lavrov, you can send someone else, because if they do that, if he does that, then no, it's not good. I want to say thank you to Army with Harmony. Why TikTok shareholders buy a Trump coin? That is, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one, Army with Harmony. Because also Trump is pushing. Why do you think he took all this tech people with him and all that? Because he wanted to push for the Trump coin, which is nothing but a fraud. That's like the same way like the Trump University. Do you have any idea? Do you guys have any idea the lawsuits that's pending regarding that? You know, I invest in crypto stuff, but heck, I will not buy Trump's coin no matter how much they offer it for. So no, it won't. That will not be a good idea at all. But that's also what he's aiming at. So thank you very much, Army with Harmony. Francis Tango, thank you so much. Dr. O, you are right. No more votes. Yeah, who are you going to vote for? Who are you going to vote for? You know, meritocracy. I'm seeing it now that is working. Not here, working in the Chinese system. And I'm not saying China has its own system, we have our own. But at least you see what's working. Wouldn't you want to use something that is working and benefits the people? Because the system in China, you get promoted based on your qualifications. There is no behind the scenes nepotism or whatever. No. If you're not qualified, you won't move forward. Then you have to force and push yourself to elevate your game so you can be promoted. I think it's perfect system. I wish we have something like that here. Unfortunately, we don't. So that's just the way it is. Anyway, guys, I I am gonna, just to remind you, on Saturday I'm gonna set it up this afternoon as soon as I log off here for my upcoming conversation with Einar Tengen, which was yesterday, but we rescheduled it. And also I'm gonna put a survey for you regarding whether you would like me, because I don't want to do the work if you are not interested. And again, it's our community, and I like to have your feedback. And it doesn't bother me if you say no. I don't take things personally from you guys, because I know your responses, your criticism is always meant to be constructive. I've been around long enough to read between the lines, but I trust you. That's how much I trust the community. So I'm going to put the survey for you, and we'll just go from there. All right, guys. I hope, wish you a good rest of the day, afternoon, evening, whatever part of the world. And I look forward to seeing you next time. As always, remember, geopolitics impact your daily life in more ways than one. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.